Hey, we're live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast here on your Friday night. We're here to talk about superhero RPGs and movies and comics because we're geeks. But before we get into all that, I'm contractually obligated to play this opening montage. So. That assures you, gentle viewer, gentle listener, that this is a high quality, a high production values podcast. None of that half-assed AI content here. No, this is all homegrown, additive-free, bespoke, farm-to-table geeky conversation for your podcast listening pleasure. So, and let me go around the horn. First off, Mr. A.A. Warren from Blue Dragon Games. Good to have you tonight, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Is that a Goldfinger poster behind you on the wall?
It is. It's an Italian Goldfinger poster.
You are a man of discerning taste. That is cool.
Thank you. Thank you very much. James Bond.
Next to Mr. Warren, we have Owen Casey Stevens. Owen, how you doing?
Better than for a long time. Thanks for asking.
Congrats once again on being cancer-free. Hey, should we be mentioning the bundle? Is that still going on?
The bundle goes on until the end of next month, so feel free.
Okay, there's a charity bundle to help Owen with his... it's expensive to have cancer in America because we are a third world country. tinyurl.com/Owen Bundle 2. Like $1,200 of RPG stuff for like $20, $25.
It's $30, and it includes things like some Icons products and the Kong Skull Island adventure, which is for Everyman or Everyday Heroes, which is basically a variation of D20. A ton of Superpowered Legend stuff, which is for M&M 3rd edition, which Jacob, conceived and drew and wrote. Pretty much I lay it out and poke him occasionally because I'm the publisher. But so there's a lot of stuff in there.
Blaine Sight says Owen is awesome. Indeed, Owen is awesome. Casey Butt says cancer sucks. I think everyone's agreement on that.
Yes.
Casey says Owen rocks. Owen does rock. And I'm reading your comments in reverse order, Casey. You said hello to start off with. So good to see you, sir. And next, we have Mr. Leonard Pimentel, the godfather of Prowlers and Paragon, the hot new kid on the block in superhero RPGs. How are you doing tonight, Leonard?
I'm doing all right. It's funny. I was just busy putting a severed horse's head in the bed of Chris, trying to quickly think of a superhero game designer. Chris Pramas. There we go. But I'm done, and I washed up, and so I'm here and ready to go on for the podcast.
Okay, well, Chris is up in Portland, so I hope that horse's head was humanely, farmed.
It was sourced, farm to table, right to bed. So yeah, we should be good.
Farm to table mafia threats here in the Portland area. All right. And last but not least, and once again sporting a manly beard, is Mr. Jacob Blackman, frequent co-host here on the BAMF Family of Podcasts. How you doing, Jacob?
Always a pleasure to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you.
Looking forward to talking about supers and comics.
Nice.
So, jumping right in, Mr. Warren had suggested that we talk about with the ubiquity of superheroes in popular culture, especially movies and video games in the last, say, decade and a half.
Yeah.
It hasn't really seemed to, that success and the popularity hasn't really seemed to cross over so much into the actual comics so much. I mean, it has changed the comics. I mean, some of the characters, like Star-Lord, is no longer the guy who, Abnett and Lanning were writing. He's now Chris Pratt. Or, Iron Man is now Robert Downey Jr. But we haven't really seen, a crossover into superhero RPGs really at all. Why do you guys think that is? And Leonard, since you said you're tired, you might want to leave early. I'm going to let you go first, sir.
Terrific. I think that the superhero movies are popular because they're popular movies. And by the way, that's been slipping, obviously, over the last several years. The last 5-ish years has seen a significant decline in the popularity of superhero movies. And barring Deadpool and Wolverine, there hadn't been a successful one in quite a little while, and a number of them were financial catastrophes. So, but having said that, even during the height, the movies were successful because they were successful movies, period. And I think when you look at the totality of the movie going audience, there's only some percentage that are gamers. So how do I describe this? I think that the percentage I think that the movie going audience that would be the kind that are directed towards games are likely also the kind of audience that would already have that interest in heroes and likely already be comic book folks. So I'm just not sure that the movie moves the needle anyway. I don't think the movie is going to take normies and throw them into the world of RPGs. In the same way that I don't think the Harry Potter movies, which made a little bit of money from what I understand, threw a bunch of, there weren't a truckload of Harry Potter-esque, certainly nothing large, RPGs. And again, they made a couple of
But
dollars.
do you think any of those kids who like grew up watching Harry Potter got into D&D because of it, or no?
I mean, there I don't know. I don't know the answer. Could it be? Sure, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, my answer is I do think it certainly could be. But I think in the world we live in now, I'm just going to slide right by that comment. But I think in the world that we live in right now, even if you're in, let's say you're in a superhero movie and you have some sort of interest in role playing, the first thing you're going to crash into, like the Titanic hitting the iceberg, is D&D. That's what you're going to crash into, and that's what you're going to find probably way ahead of anything else. So that's just my suspicion on it.
Well, I mean, it is the Coca-Cola of the RPG world. Even it's what everybody knows. It's the big monster in the room. So it's if you say, hey, you want to role play? People are like, sure, let's play D&D, because that's what the kids know.
It's Coca-Cola if we decide that only tabletop and only RPGs get counted in the soda category, right? D&D's reach pales compared to Magic the Gathering. It is nothing compared to World of Warcraft. It's great that it is a successful tabletop RPG, but it does not primarily compete with other tabletop RPGs for exactly the reason that it is the 600-pound gorilla of that realm. It's mostly competing with people's entertainment dollar with other things that use their time. And I'll note that certainly Harry Potter had some impact on tabletop RPGs. There were, in the years when the first few movies came out, there were a lot of people that released Magic Academy books, which was not, students going to a magic school was not a common plot prior to then. And Pathfinder released one just in the past year. But because of the author of Harry Potter's unwillingness to allow anyone to make a Harry Potter tabletop RPG, because I worked at Wizards of the Coast when they had the license to that, and she declared that you could make a tabletop RPG, but only as long as no one but her ever got to decide what any character did, even characters other people made up. So you can't make an RPG out of it. That sort of dampened back the possibilities there.
And Blaine Seitz says, also, if I may, Kieran Gillian had some commentary about D&D and tabletop RPGs via Die the Comic, which I've been meaning to read, and friend of the podcast, Grant Howitt, who run like all the Ennies a couple years ago, and he did Eat the Reich, which is about eating Hitler when you're vampire commandos, so he's a good guy, and Honey Heist, so he's a legend. Anyway, they did an RPG about Die the Comic. That being said, I still think it changes my RPGs if Owen had given his input. So you got to find Kieran Gillian at a convention. Now that we have conventions again, Owen, and tell him what's up.
Yeah, we will see if I want to put myself through an actual physical convention ever again. I'd like to, but good grief, they've gotten insane.
Yeah, they've gotten pricey too. So, okay, but I mean, just getting back to the subject, superhero movies were huge. Even when we had the Avengers movies, and the Marvel machine was still creating more quality content than not, reliably. Going back a few years, we didn't really. I mean, we didn't really see a bump that I even noticed. Even, I know we had the Marvel Heroic Super Role Playing Game from Margaret Weiss, and that didn't even, they canceled that, a year in.
It's like second campaign, right? Like,
yeah, I had a bunch of stuff written for the Cosmic source book. I was ready.
The Annihilation one, or
Yeah. I
that book looked awesome. Like, I actually bought the core book simply because they announced they were doing Annihilation, and then shortly after they said, "Oh, we're not good. Just kidding. We're not doing it." So.
Yeah, I had a bunch of stuff written up on my hard drive, and Margaret Weiss was like, "We're canceled, but we'll make sure we pay all you guys." And I didn't really ask for the money because I was like, "Well, I mean, I feel bad at this point because it's not going to get published." But yeah,
just hand it all to Jacob, and he'll make it a superpowered legend supplement and change all the names and file out the serial numbers.
Hell yeah!
Weirdly, the success of superhero movies is likely to cause licensed superhero RPGs to get canceled, because when a company has an intellectual property and they discover that property is more valuable than they thought, they hate anyone else making money off of it. Mm-hmm. And so, that RPG gets canceled, and then they release their own RPG that they've got tighter controls or a new deal over. And that is exactly the sort of non-intuitive impact you can have when things suddenly seem like they're worth more money than anyone thought.
Is this why Green Ronin is doing stuff like the Valiant Universe RPG? Because
yeah. So it's interesting to me that no one. So that Green Ronin did do DC, right? But that license is gone.
Yeah, they did DC, but well before the big DC movie push, and that was always a limited license. That was specifically, you get to do this number of books, and then the license ends.
So has anyone else picked up that license, or is DC not, interested in?
There is not currently a DC RPG on the market.
And to the best of my knowledge, they are not interested in there being a DC RPG on the market. And one of the things that Green Ronin very carefully did, Green Ronin was kind of pushed to release the Batman of the moment that they put out the book, and the Superman of the moment they put out the book. And they decided that instead, and they pushed back and convinced the licensor that what they wanted to do were sort of iconic, timeless versions of these characters. Right. And given that those characters aren't very much like they were when that RPG came out, I think that was very much a smart decision. And of course, it makes sense for Green Ronin because the DC role-playing game they put out is Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. So you can pick those up as a supplement for 3rd edition, and every book that comes out for M&M 3rd edition is therefore an expansion for your DC universe, as long as you don't insist on getting, I need the stats for the animated version of Harley Quinn.
Or I want to do Red and Blue Superman from the Grant Morrison years. But
isn't there a separate Batman RPG though that's coming out, or it came out like recently? Like, I think Monolith or somebody did it, or again, it's just Batman.
There was Monolith created a board game for Batman,
right,
and distributed basically what was a scenario book, which could be construed as an RPG, but mostly it was scenarios for the board game.
Got it. I thought it was an RPG, like sort of like Mayfair had that standalone Batman game back in the day. I thought it was a similar.
I think it was sort of closer to like Descent and some of the other complex scenarios where you may or may not all be working together. That sort of feels like an RPG, but isn't.
Right.
And we've now referenced the Superman mullet. If you can find it, I believe it's on Substack. Dr. Comics, Jason Tondro has done an entire essay about why the mullet Superman is someone's favorite Superman. And as a creator who is doing something that comes later, what is the smart and respectful way to handle the fact that these things have so many different things? And of course, he was working on the Forgotten Realms. And the Forgotten Realms has had all sorts of things happen. And every version of that is someone's favorite version of that.
Totally.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. I mean, right now there are 3 distinct versions of the Penguin character. in different DC. I mean, if you look at HBO Max, there's one Penguin. If you look at the comics, there's another Penguin. If you look at, well, again, on HBO Max, the Caped Crusader comic, there's a third version, a gender swapped version. It can't be gender swapped version of the Penguin. So it's and it's fine. It's cool. I like all three of them, but it's a little weird to see that many different takes on the same basic premise, all in active media at the same time. Anyway, just wanted to point out that while we haven't seen a surge in tabletop RPGs, our friends Cryptozoic have an Arkham Asylum deck building game, and I've seen some board games, DC branded board games have done really well, and this is over $400,000 with 19 days left to go.
Nice.
That's just on 2,000 backers. So there's people throwing down big money.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Marvel has had a lot of games that like you can play on your smartphone since the
Right.
Iron Man movie came out that have been hugely successful. Sometimes these things are about ROI, return on investment, right? I can either spend less than $1 million on a tabletop RPG and make less than $2 million, or I can spend $10 million making a AAA class smartphone game and make $50 million. And
Sure.
the more popular something is, the more companies are willing to spend bigger bucks. Tabletop RPGs are, when you're talking about mass market licensed time consuming media, they're at the low end of cost and they're at the low end of market penetration. So
I think they're just, if I can tag on to that, I think they're, as you're saying, they're on the low end of cost and the low end of market penetration and the low end of revenue. And at the end of the day, for these companies, I suspect part of it is the revenue, if it's large enough to generate any remotely significant revenue. But I actually think that a lot of the projects are marketing. They hadn't been for a long time. But at this point, they've seen the movie potential, the revenue potential of the films. And if the films are successful, the revenue potential of the large scale merchandise of a film that's actually tremendously successful. So, you know, I don't know if I talked about it here on a different one, but like that Avengers Assemble cartoon, which was really just advertising for the Avengers movie. I don't know how much it cost to make. I don't know how much they made in terms of advertising, but I firmly believe they didn't care. What they cared about was the $1 billion+ series of movies that were going to, and the point was just to keep the characters in people's minds and especially in the kids' minds while they're in between movies. And so somebody
first Avengers cartoon, right? And then they launched a second one that was more kind of kid friendly.
Yeah. And so I think to some extent there may have been at the end of the day, whatever they do in terms of game stuff, I'm sure when you compare the revenue of a multi-billion-dollar film, everything else that we're talking about is kind of peanuts. So at the end of the day, I'm assuming some portion of them deciding what to pay any attention to at all is what's most effective at marketing their brand, their product, their characters, and keeping them all on the minds of kids.
Do you think that's why they did the Marvel game? Like why?
Oh,
I was kind of surprised, honestly, that Marvel even bothered with that.
100%.
100%. There are a number of things that have driven some people to dip a toe into RPGs as marketing. And I will, for example, note the Wendy's role-playing game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a playable RPG that is officially written and released by Wendy's, the burger joint.
Yeah.
There was an Old Spice character class that Old Spice released The Gentleman for the Pathfinder role-playing game. When the fantasy Victorian show showed up on Amazon, it's something Row. The name is escaping me.
Carnival Row.
Yeah.
Right.
When they released it, they had a tabletop RPG ready to go for free when they released that series.
Huh.
And Monty Cook Games was involved in it. So those are places where someone said, hey, we can get some eyeballs, but also we can get an article written about us, right? In like Business Today, whatever, on CNN Business Week, because we've done this thing that people haven't done before that sounds ridiculous. The other side of it is trying to get to that movie money. I've had a number of people I know who are hanging out in Hollywood, right, that say that producers and directors will sometimes go to, like, especially Golden Apple, but to some of the comic and game shops there and wander around looking to find a property that looks like it would be cheap to pick up and you could turn into a great big movie.
Really?
So yeah, absolutely. So there are some people who want to get RPGs made so that the cool geeks, right? More people play D&D in Hollywood now than ever did before.
Sure.
Vin Diesel had a Witch Hunter movie that was basically his D&D character as a movie. So because the cost is so low, you will occasionally have people do, there was a Bloodshot movie, but the Bloodshot movie, regardless of quality, got killed by the lockdown. It had no chance to do well. So it makes lots of sense for Valiant to go, well, we had this movie. This movie didn't do super well, but maybe we can get background interest. And if somebody's assistant who's going to bring them coffee looks over their shoulder and says, oh, Bloodshot, yeah, there's a whole Valiant RPG. Lots of kids down at wherever are playing it. That is a way to suggest that there is an existing fan base that may well otherwise be invisible.
Is that part of the problem? Is kids aren't playing RPGs anymore, or aren't playing superhero RPGs anymore? I mean,
of course they are. I mean, Mutants and Masterminds wouldn't still be having new content come out if they weren't.
Yeah, there's plenty of people playing the games. It's just the trying to get ties to the existing franchises has been the issue, and trying to get people who are interested in those franchises to find the games has been a problem. Even with when COVID happened and D&D got their huge boost, thanks to Critical Role and all the other live plays that happened during the lockdown, it drew people to D&D.
Yeah.
But that didn't necessarily transfer over to other RPGs. And yeah, I've been one of those proponents of, hey, you like superhero games? There's this great superhero game I play called Mutants and Masterminds. And the thing is, people will come and look at Mutants and Masterminds and then say, this is really complicated. I mean, I have the option to do anything, but all those open choices leads to decision paralysis.
And that's why I think maybe more streamlined games like Steve's other game, Icons, or our friend Lynn over here with Prowlers and Paragons. Things are a little bit easier to pick up and run with than.
Sorry, please go ahead.
I was just singing the praises of your system, sir. That's all.
and I understand decision paralysis, but they have templates for any number of major characters that you can think of right in front of the book.
But I don't think it's the same. Look,
look.
Hey, that's it.
It's the other Andrew.
Coming in like Kramer in a
there goes the neighborhood.
No. Andrew. All other Andrews are other Andrew.
We can just
I'll
call
be
you
other Andrew, as long as I'm not Andy. I'll be other Andrew.
Oh, me too. I hate that. Oh, call me Drew. Just don't call me Andy.
Yeah, Drew Spawn.
But actually, just call me Bear. That's my actual name for the most part in this world. Anyway, hi guys. How you doing?
Hey.
Sorry I was late. I was running a game.
Oh.
You are forgiven.
Thank you. All right. Sorry, I cut off Len when I showed up. I'm so sorry, Len. I love you.
Typical. Very kind of you to say kind things about the game, but I'll have to say I don't think my game is completely noob friendly for the same reason. It has lots of choices to make. I do think that for the choice at the end of the day, picking one of 7 classes or one of 7 races and one of X classes is much more noob friendly than any kind of hero game where you actually have some flexibility to design your character, unless it's a highly archetype structure system. And I think there's 1 or 2 games that sort of work that way, but they're not probably the most popular ones. The most popular ones, I think, are, M&M and Icons and Face Rip clones, and P&P maybe is in there somewhere. But they all have that And heroic.
There you go.
They all have that. The nature of superhero characters is such that there is some front end complexity, and no matter how much you simplify it, unless literally you just pick out of 1 of 20 pre-mades, at least compared to something like a D&D.
Yeah. What we need for superhero RPGs a really good box set.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what? What did you say?
A really good box set. He's asking if what we need for superhero RPGs is a really good box set.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because to me, like back in the day, I mean, I think right now, although we're talking about superhero games having a problem, there's actually quite a few really good games. I mean, like there's actually, I can think of about 10 superhero games out there that are great. Some of the creators being right here. But back in the day, like when I was playing games, when I first got introduced into gaming, the big two were Villains and Vigilantes and Champions.
Yep.
I guess Superworld was out there, but I didn't really know about it. And Villains and Vigilantes had a box set. I guess Champions did too, but for whatever reason in the stores, I usually saw it more as individual books.
Bear just flashed like 10 superhero box sets.
Yeah, I remember that Villains and Vigilantes box set. Maybe something like that would be a good way to boost that idea nowadays.
Of course, the trick being that nowadays those boxes are way more expensive than they were back then. And considering that the superhero market is, at least the superhero RPG market is, I think, in order of magnitude smaller, that's something of an investment to put in for uncertain. Like if anyone was going to do it, I would assume Green Ronin would do it, and they haven't as of yet.
They almost did for Third Ed, and then there were some holdups and delays, and the price escalated greatly, and they just decided to go without it. So it's
while I was at Paizo, we were looking at a box set for Starfinder, and we just could not get the cost per unit to end up being reasonable, no matter how much we tried to alter the product. The beginner boxes for Starfinder and both editions of Pathfinder, they're not actual loss leaders in that they're not losing money on sales, but their profit margin is much thinner on those because they are putting them out so that people will then go buy other books.
Sure.
And let's all process that his comment is about Pathfinder, for heaven's sake. I mean, let's yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Bear. Sorry.
I just want to jump in real fast. Mr. Warren, who are you?
Oh, sorry, I didn't introduce.
I'm a random guy who met Mike on Facebook. No, I'm an author and a role-playing game enthusiast,
cool.
And I recently launched my first professional products on DriveThru.
I've been wanting to introduce you guys.
He's the new guy of us.
He's the new guy. He's reading games. He's doing adventures, characters for supers, and he's talking to Len, and he does advanced phase rip, which.
Oh, you're the advanced phase rip guy.
I'm a advanced phase rip guy. I do Supers Red and advanced phase rip for.
Supers Red, never heard of it.
Bunch of great games.
You know.
Like my name's right in the front of the book at the bottom beside Walt.
It's in the license I have to copy paste into the.
Yeah, you see my name a lot there for some reason, even though I told Walt, take me out, man. It's all yours. I think one of the things we got to keep in mind, guys, is that there is, when I subscribe to various newsletters from DriveThruRPG for updates of product, right? And fantasy, 100%, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, everything is going to be fantasy. But I've had this argument with people before, and I still haven't feel like I've been disproven by the results. Superheroes are the number 2 genre of stuff I see coming down, because I'm subscribed to horror, sci-fi, Western, fantasy, and superhero. And 90% of what I get is fantasy. And of the remaining 10%, 90% of that is superhero. I don't see so much horror. I don't see so much sci-fi. And I certainly don't see so much Wild West.
And when there is, if there is Wild West, it's probably blended in with fantasy, right? So you end up with Deadlands because they decided to add fantasy chocolate to their Old West peanut butter. Yeah. When there is sci-fi, it is frequently a licensed property that has a fan base, right? Aliens or Star Trek or Star Wars, to name something I've worked on.
The Expanse, what have you.
Or Starfinder, which does the Shadowrun thing, right? Starfinder specifically said, okay, we're going to have a science fiction setting. Oh, but we're going to make it the far future of our fantasy setting so that you can have paladins in powered armor with holy +5 plasma rifles, which, that was a design goal of ours for Starfinder. So I absolutely, I actually agree with Bear that especially if you discount licensed things, which I think almost all licensed properties are really their own bucket, rather than saying this is a sci-fi thing and this is a fantasy thing. No, those are all licensed from popular things. That's the bucket they're competing with. I think there's a lot to be said for superhero. And of course, one of the nice things about many of the most popular superhero settings is if you want to be a wizard, do it. That's a perfectly appropriate superhero concept. If you want to have a suit of powered armor, if you want to be from Asgard, or if you want to, just be a kid who decided to learn Taekwondo when your dad was killed. Those are all viable character concepts. And while I know it is, a lot of people feel like we haven't had a lot of successful superhero movies in the past few years. I'm not saying that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was a good movie, but it made $955 million. It's in the top 20 superhero movies of all time. Wakanda Forever made $859 million. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, $845 million. So even just in the past couple of years, there are going to eventually hit billion-dollar superhero movies coming out.
Well, look at Wolverine and Deadpool. Worldwide, it's made $1.5 billion so far. Yeah, right.
The only reason I didn't mention it is that when Len was talking about this, he said, "Except for Wolverine."
No, but this is the thing. This shows you there is such a passion and a hunger for good superheroes out there, and with the last 8 years or 6 years of Marvel product that has been so pathetic and so lacking in feeling heroic, people were desperate for something. And then this came along, made them laugh, made them chuckle, respected the past, and was a bit reverent towards it. And the fans responded in droves.
I mean,
that's something.
Unfortunately, I agree with you entirely, Bear. Unfortunately, in my experience, the problem is that the people that make the movies will not get the right lesson from this.
No, of course not. Look at Star Trek. Okay, look. Sorry, I'm the Star Trek guy. I take that. I'll wear that hat.
I love Star Trek.
Discovery, Strange New Worlds, all the J.J. Abrams films. Yeah, they were popular. They made money, but Star Trek fans hate them, and they tend to have low ratings now, and they tend to not get good results. Prodigy and Lower Decks were reverent to Star Trek. Lower Decks we're going to make jokes showing you we've watched all of Star Trek, so we know the jokes we're making will connect. Prodigy, it's a kid's show, except they're going to act more like Starfleet officers than the adult shows. They're going to be more about what Starfleet's all about. What's the lesson taken from that? Canceled Lower Decks. Prodigy may not get a third season. But Jesus, if they could have given us one more season of Discovery, they would have. It's insane. I've worked in the film industry for 20 fucking years, and I don't know why this is happening anymore. It used to be you wanted to make good shit. Now they just want to make shit. Anyway.
Personally, I believe they're canceling Lower Decks because the characters are no longer Lower Decks. As of last season, they were promoted as officers. They are technically no longer Lower Decks. So the application of the show technically no longer applies to them. They can continue in the
you could string that out 3 more seasons, though. You could have
continue in the animated universe. I just believe they will call it something else.
Television
shows. I think they're canceling those shows because Paramount is bleeding money and can't afford it.
Big time because of Kurtzman's. Okay, so look, one of the things, if you look at all the garbage that's coming out right now that's annoying the fandom and making things bad, you'll notice a common thread that runs through all of it. Almost every showrunner or head writer spent some time at Bad Robot.
Right.
And that is a disturbing trend to see how much power Bad Robot has and what influence they have on getting people's jobs, and then what lessons they never learned by working at Bad Robot and producing material out of it that is just absolutely unwatchable. The crown on the turd, the crown turd on the fuck, you know what I'm trying to say, is Rings of Power. Those two guys had no experience other than what they did for Bad Robot. And look at what they
were involved in that one.
Oh, yeah. These guys were nobodies. And somehow they're running a show and all this. And I looked into it. I'm like, why? And there it was. Bad Robot.
I'm not going to defend J.J. Abrams or his Trek, but I will say that Strange New Worlds does get excellent ratings. It was renewed. It's got another season coming. And a lot of new and old Star Trek fans like it.
And a lot of old and new Star Trek fans don't like it. it's a real divider.
Of course, but that's
Strange New Worlds is a real divider.
That's true for everything, right? The three prequel movies are some Star Wars fans' favorite Star Wars films. I think they're objectively wrong, but it is still the favorites of some Star Wars fans.
Because you weren't 7 when they came out. Yeah, yeah.
I remember very clearly when Next Generation launched. A lot of Trekkies. Like there was.
I had friends who refused to watch it.
Yeah.
You know,
If you hear the very first episode, I kind of sympathize with them, but it got better.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to comic books and superheroes before poor fucking Mike has an aneurysm.
I was about to say,
but Bear, if I can, we were talking about what superhero RPGs have not seen the spike you might hope for with the popularity of movies, even 5-7 years ago when the Marvel machine was running along relatively reliably. But you, sir, recently had a crowdfunding campaign for. What'd you raise? $40,000 for Heroic?
I wish.
30,000?
20.
20? Okay, all right.
And then we had failed pledges and taxes and everything else, and I took home a lot less money than you would think. Right. As I've been, because I'm very open with my backers on this, I'm on the hook to get the product out as promised. Personal $10K.
Okay, well, I was just going to say you're not a licensed property, you're not a big publisher, but you raised a 5-figure sum on BackerKit. How'd you pull that off with the superhero RPG market being so fractured and dispersed as it is?
You know what? I could pontificate wildly about it and say why I think. Ultimately, I think it boils down to networking. My time in the film industry taught me to network well, which is also something we look at. Kelsey Dion was able to do that for Shadow Dark, and she did on a fucking quantum level compared to me, but she was able to do it. But I think also my YouTube channel helped because I've spent 3 years building a community and making sure that they were ready to go. I mean, I only had 410 backers at the end of the day. It wasn't some runaway success smash hit or anything like that. I know people who have produced 5e supplements or Shadow Dark supplements that have had way more backers and way more money than I was able to raise. But I think Len would probably be the person that could give you the best analysis of it because he was there. He watched what I went through. We talked a lot while it was going on. And Len has an ability to, as they used to say on BSG, cut through the Felder carb in a way that no one else can. So I would ask Len, why do you think we were able to succeed without a licensed product on Heroic the way we did?
Honestly, I think it boils down to 3 things. One is you and the network that you built up. The established YouTube fan base was, I think, going to support you almost on anything to the maximum extent that they could.
Okay.
I think that's a no-brainer. Just the network in general.
Okay.
2, specifically, your approach to how you marketed the particular Kickstarter, which was you drilled down item by item on what you were thinking and how you were approaching it and so on. And when you have an existing fan base already, it's interesting for RPG nerds. And it's also advertising. That combination of it's interesting and it's advertising is fairly potent. And you have to have an established network to do that, and you did. And the third one is nostalgia is extremely and incredibly powerful and potent and intoxicating. And at the end of the day, while your game is not classic Marvel superheroes role-playing, it certainly stands on those shoulders, since that's the baseline and the framework, and it just sort of modernifies it. But at the end of the day, I think it's part of its success hinges off of the nostalgic love that people have for that old system. Yeah. And we can go into, and you and I have in various other places, why people love that old system. Lots of reasons and lots of different whatever, but the very fact that it springs off of it, and for that matter, that you could use all the material that's available free online for that system, certainly gave you a big push as well. I think those 3 things tie together neatly to underscore your success.
And that's something I would say to anybody that wants to do this is build a network. You got a webcam, you got a microphone, make a YouTube channel. Oh, I don't know, I can't. Just turn on your camera and talk about what you love. If you have a passion for it, it's going to show in your way you speak. It's going to show in the way you talk to people, and people will respond to it. Don't get sucked into edition warring, culture warring bullshit. That's toxic. Go, this channel is about positive stuff, positive ideas for role playing, positive this, that, the other thing. Network with smaller channels, network with bigger channels. One of the biggest things I got as a bump for me was the first step was Mr. Welch. I don't know if you guys know who Mr. Welch is. He's like the Mystara guy on YouTube, about 7,000 subscribers. He came on my shows a bunch of times. We would talk. And then through him, I met Tex of the Black Pants Legion, which is like the biggest Battletech group on YouTube. And by having Tex on, his fan base came over, and a lot of them stuck around and stayed because they liked what I had to say. It's one of the things I love doing. It's why I'm bringing back the Four Color Cafe. Len, you better be ready to be a host, because we basically were able to then talk to people who were smaller channels, larger channels, publishers. And for God's sakes, we got Larry Elmore on. We had Tim Kask. We had Zeb Cook. I've had Jeff Grubb on. You know, like, these are people that, like, old school people know. And so seeing that, they see that you're legit. They see that you have a love for the hobby, that you love what you're doing. They will respond to you. So when you're ready to go, hey, I'm Owen K. Stevens. I've done all these great things. And today, guys, I'm going to announce my backer kit next month. I'm going to be launching Path Star Monkeys. And it's going to be the greatest game ever. And I'm going to tell you all about it in 5 videos. And it's going to be great. And we're going to go back and forth. They're ready. And when they're waiting for you to drop that live link so they can run and be the first people in to support you because you've spent time talking to them, working with them, and being around them. So you have integrity to them at that point in time. Do not squander it. Be 100% transparent when you get to crowdfunding. I told all my backers, we would like to have the thing in your hand by Christmas. I've crowdfunded before. There are problems we cannot see that are going to come up between now and then, and the only solution is going to be throwing money at them. Therefore, we will do our best, but it's a moving target, and we appreciate your understanding. And then every step of the way, you tell them what's going on. When I lost a writer, I told them. When I gained a writer, Len, I told them. When I lost my artist, I told them. When I had replacement artists, I told them and showed them the art. One of my backers refers to it as the game of Theseus. She's like, this isn't even the same crew who started. It's not even the same ship anymore. But they don't care because we're open, we're transparent, we're communicating, and they respond to that because they're so used to BackerKit and Kickstarter and Indiegogo backers, creators. Got your money and I don't say shit now. And then eventually they may or may not get their book. They're so used to that if you just give them transparency, honesty, and communicate with them, they'll back you to the wall. They'll stick with you through thick and thin. It's just the way it is. Thank you for attending my TED Talk.
So, all right.
You're
that
muted,
was
Owen. Owen, you're muted.
Owen, you're muted.
Well, it's the only way I can shut myself up. So I want to leave on what Bear said and mention one other thing. A lot of people, like you mentioned Jeff Grubb, right? I've written products with Jeff Grubb. I've played with Jeff Grubb. Jeff Grubb's a great guy. A lot of these people are great guys. If you appear to have a legitimate channel and you invite them over and they go look at your channel and they go, oh, I'm not going to get associated with someone who's constantly tearing down other creators. This is someone who appreciates what he's doing, right? That's how you get Jeff Grubb to agree to be on your channel. So,
Owen, to build on that, that's how you get Jeff Grubb to go, you should talk to Steve Winter because he was the other guy in the project. Let me hook you two up. And then you get Steve Winter on your show because you've shown, like you said, you have integrity. Continue, sir.
So it's not Bear is not just telling you how to be a nice guy. These are successful steps for a good business plan, right? It's not just that toxicity sucks. It's that it tears itself down and it limits who you can get to associate with you.
Yep.
And that has very little to do with the topic that we're talking about, but I thought it was important enough I wanted to insert it.
But it is interesting.
No, but it is because sorry. Drew, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, but it's super interesting, especially to someone like me who's like kind of new to releasing product. You guys,
how many comic book channels do you guys watch on YouTube that are just negative and they're just shitting on comic books all the time? They're just talking garbage about the modern comic books. They never have anything nice to say, and it's just garbage. You know what I mean?
Not because I don't
right
like
out of my mouth. Like I was literally about to say before coming on to this podcast, I was watching this comic book YouTuber guy, and I watched one video that was kind of entertaining, got to his next video and he just started spewing toxic stuff, and I was like, oh, I'm done, out.
Yeah.
Like, and they're all like that. You're right. So many of them are like that. Like, they're just so unhappy talking about comic books.
That's why I
Negativity
like
moves the
comics.
algorithm.
Yeah.
It's sad. But I've learned ways to cheat the algorithm and have some fun. I did a little experiment where I did 2 this game is the D&D killer title videos, and they're like 2,000 views, and it's really fun. So I've got a video coming in the future. Mike, I want to run this video by you. You tell me if it's appropriate or not, okay?
Sure.
The
No.
5 worst D&D players you can have at your table. Number 5, Lizzie Borden. She's psychotic and might murder some of the other players. Number 4, Stalin. He always wants to be in control. He'll erase the other players from the campaign, and all that shit. That's what I want. But then number 3, Steve. You know what because fuck it, I'm so sick of this shit. I'm so sick of this type of YouTube. This is a great communication tool. I have friends literally on every continent in the world now because of my channel. And we hang out on the Discord, we talk, we role play together, we have so much fun. And every time I go into the other world, it's all negative, 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 negative. You know what I mean? It's exhausting. Exhausting. I still can't see the chat in here, by the way. I don't know what you do in your settings.
Neither can I. It's probably Steve's fault.
Fucking Steve.
Fucking Steve, man. I don't know.
Steve.
I'll see what I can do. For a while, I had it turned off by default because we had some cranky people in our chat, but I can maybe open things up. So
I can see it now. Okay, I went to YouTube and I can see it on the thing.
It's why I like groups like the Watchtower and Casually Comics, because they're very passionate about their love
She's
for
wonderful.
I love
comics.
Casually Comics. Yeah.
She is so wonderful. Oh my god. And she's Canadian. Of course she's wonderful.
There you go. But that actually brings to something interesting, Mike, that you said that I don't think we were, because we were talking about games, but when you introduced the show, you also talked about comic sales as well as games, because comic sales aren't actually doing that great considering how popular these movies are either.
They're tanking.
Yeah, which I also find fascinating.
well, I mean, we kind of get into a place where there's sort of, from the big two, it's an idea farm. It's we're pointing people back to the movies or other stuff, or you're trying like hell to. But I mean, hell, IDW is almost out of business as of
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
That's a very depressing different show, which maybe you should do, but that's not this show.
IDW or comics in general?
IDW specifically.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of the show, Dan Taylor, used to work at IDW. Whenever I ask him about it, he's always like, I suspect there's stories there, but yeah, hell, they did a ton of licensed comics back in the day, and
Aren't book sales down generally? Book sales are down, magazine sales are down. Like I don't know, but I kind of feel like people are reading less than they did previously.
But manga sales are up and they're massive, and manga is hitting on every cylinder. Dude, there are comics today from Marvel and DC that are considered hits that would have been canceled in the 90s for low sales.
Well,
Yes,
but
but
circulation now, like 30,000 is like considered a good book, right?
Yeah, 30K is considered a smash hit.
What did Jim Lee's X-Men 1 sold like 1 million copies, 3 million copies or something.
The other thing to keep in mind about whether the public is reading more or watching more is that it is really easy to get a lot more content than it used to be.
Yeah,
right.
I can go on Amazon and decide to download a digital story and have it in my hands in 2 minutes my hands and read it online. And it may not be from a publisher, right? It may be that someone found a piece of stock art that looks good and they wrote a cute blurb and I read 2 pages and I like it. And maybe they never make more than pizza money on it, but those are still words being read. So you've got both. You've got Sturgeon's Law, right? 90% of everything is crap. So, of course, the more stuff is out there, the more bad stuff is out there, even if the percentage hasn't changed. And then you also have, if there's a flood of content and the audience is buying as much as they ever did, but there are more things, then each thing sells fewer copies.
I want to build on that by saying 2 things. One, he's right. 90% of my product is crap. So, I don't know what the larger market is. And two, 15 years ago, someone tried to save the American comic book industry by telling them to look closely at the manga model and to stop doing monthly floppies and start looking at doing quarterly collections. And that would be their way forward, and they would be able to survive. And all these old-timer, we know better than you jerks went, no. And now look where we are. Floppies are failing. Manga compilations are ruining the charts and selling hundreds of thousands, not tens of thousands. You know
And
what I
for
mean?
that matter, it looks to me that things like the Micronaut omnibuses are selling very, very, very well. The ROM omnibuses are
I
selling
just bought
very,
my
very,
volume
very
2
well.
of Micronauts.
I
You
How
know,
much
Oh
do you
yeah,
guys
I
think
was trying to price the two Who's Who DC Who's Who omnibuses. That I saw the
Uh-huh.
prices. I'm like, I'm good without those.
So are you
but
talking
they're
like
selling,
physical
right?
or
This stuff
digital?
sells
Jason-
well. So
Sorry, Jason just raised a point there. It's a very that I was going to make, which is also the cost of comic books today
Yeah.
is
It's
crazy high as compared to the relative cost of comic books back. And I mean, this may circle back to, the cost of paper nowadays. It's funny, printing you would think would be easier, but I think the cost of paper is higher, or whatever it is. The relative cost is way higher now. And look, I can't say this for sure, and I can't say this across the board, but I have lots of comics and memory of comics where, yes, they were episodic, but you could read a comic book and it was one story per comic book. And yes, there were overarching stories and so on, but so you paid less to read one story. Whereas I don't think that exists anymore. I think in modern comic books, they are all overarching stories over a period of 12 or 18 months or 24 months or whatever. And I think just our tolerance, our level of patience for that kind of storytelling, I think technology to some extent even has moved us past that. It costs $5 to buy one issue of Thor, which isn't going to be a story. It's going to be one sliver of a story that we have to wait 12 months for, as opposed to, buying a manga thing that's a whole bunch in once or whatever. So yeah,
you know who is selling 10% of all comics right now? Dave Pilkey, Captain Underpants, and Dogman.
Huh.
Dogman by itself sold 60 million copies in the last 10 years.
I don't even know what those are.
we
That's
have all the
wild.
books.
I've heard of Captain Underpants, but not Dave.
They're
Well,
kids'
Yeah, I've heard
books.
of Captain Underpants, yeah.
There's a Dogman
I'm-
movie coming out in January. It's for kids. It's comics for kids. What a concept.
My little guy
tried
loved those.
reading some of the new stuff that's out there from Marvel and DC, and instead I'm rereading the Dark Horse, Carrie Nord, Kurt Busiek, Conan comics instead, because that's worth the read. I was so annoyed. I picked up the new Spider-Gwen, whatever they're calling her now. I picked up the first issue because I'm like, okay, I love this character, and I want to see what they're going to do with her in a new series. And the cover was beautiful. And then I opened it up, and it was amateur hour art inside. And this is one of the problems DC and Marvel are having, is that unless it's their flagship characters, Spider-Man, the Avengers, Batman, Superman, they're hiring fairly untalented people. They've gotten rid of the idea of house styles completely. And these comics don't look like superhero comics. They look like Bob's indie zine that you used to get in college that you would print up a few copies of every month. It's not good. When the producers don't care, how is the audience going to care?
It's fair. Well, hey, we've been talking for just about an hour. I want to mention friend of the podcast. Got to wrap things up at some point. My wife's been texting me like, when are you going to sleep? You got to be up at 7 tomorrow. So, friend of the podcast. Actually, do you want to talk about this, Jacob? You've been kind of quiet.
Sure.
Okay.
Friend of the podcast, Louis Porter Jr. of Louis Porter Jr. Productions, is currently producing a crowdfunding campaign for the Amazing Universe campaign setting. This is a superhero setting that is for the 3rd edition Mutants and Masterminds, much like the Superpowered Legends that I produce. And the basic idea is, what if the writers of the classic 1980s Teen Titans and New Mutants continued their stories into the modern day and had a whole fun universe built on those premises.
So it's a cool new setting for M&M. Our friend Jacob is doing just a shitload of art for it.
Yeah.
It all looks pretty amazing. And tinyurl.com/amazinguniverseKS, which now I realize it's amazing unisex, but let's just say amazing universe.
I see amazing gun inversex. I don't know.
That was a great band, man. They were huge in Portland in the 90s. But check them out now.
Amazing Gun
Yeah.
Inverse.
Amazing Gun and Inversex were two different bands, and they were from the original Source band, but they split into two, basically.
Yeah, I still prefer Strawberry Machine Cake, but to each their own.
Well, who can't? Why wouldn't you?
You guys are very funny. You regular Bob Hope. Check out the Kickstarter. Lewis is a good guy. Back his stuff so Jacob can make more art for him. And one more time, tinyurl/Owen Bundle 2. That's the Owen charity bundle to help Mr. Owen, who has been fighting cancer. And congrats again, Owen, on being cancer free.
Good job.
Thank you.
As for all these M&M products you guys are making, I look really forward to when you decide to make the heroic versions. I think it'll be a really interesting thing to,
That'll be amazing as soon as they're done with the Prowlers and Paragons versions.
Oh, well, of course. We have to do Prowlers and Paragons
I
first.
need to become familiar with the systems so I can do any conversion work necessary.
We've got people that can do the character conversions for you.
We used to
Bear,
produce-
if you've got people that you want to do the game stats versions, reach out, right? We've got a few hundred characters with the art and the backstory ready to go. We can talk if you want to have someone else do the stats.
yeah,
This guy up here is supposed to start we're going to stat a couple of his books to see how they sell once their art comes out.
we used to be doing Superpowered Legends with Mike, and he was converting them into icons. We were doing iconic legends, but he just got caught up in he had a bunch of work that he had to catch up on, so we weren't able to keep up with the
Legends. How's that sound, Len?
Yeah.
Heroic
Doesn't
Legends.
that sound awesome?
Yeah,
Heroic
it sounds
Legends?
amazing, doesn't it?
We'll talk, gentlemen. When the game's ready, we'll definitely talk.
Absolutely. I'm
But
100%.
hang on, Owen. You and I still have to have a conversation, so don't think you're getting off the hook that easy, buddy.
I am here for a conversation with you anytime, Bear.
I look forward to it. Mike, you know what, Mike? You are the linchpin that brings people together.
I'm the guy behind the guy behind the guy.
Over there by the door, smoking a cigarette. That guy. That was me. What's that? What would you hold up, Jacob? What was that?
In the
Void
meantime,
Rivals.
I just want to talk about Void Rivals as we're talking about comics we really love right now. Void Rivals just recently finished its 12th issue so a full year of comics. There are 2 trade paperbacks. This is Volume 1. Volume 2 just came out. It's currently at my bedside. I'm rereading the last 6 issues. And it takes place in the Energon universe, being produced by Image and Skybound Entertainment. It is basically while they have a Transformers title in that's going on. That's all the stuff that's going on with Optimus Prime and all those guys happening on Earth. Void Rivals is what's going on in space.
And that's written by Kirkman, right?
Yes, that is written by Robert Kirkman of
Kirkman.
Walking Dead and another little series you might have heard of called Invincible.
The Kirkman is invincible. What? Boy,
Indeed.
it's doing the nose. But all right, so that's good to check out. I hate to say it, I'm not reading any comics right now. I know. It's a lot of audiobooks, a lot of novels, but anybody else reading comics right now?
See, the fact
I'm
that you're not
reading
reading
the
comics is
Absolute
exactly why
Power.
comic sales are down.
I'm reading the DC Absolute Power event. I'm enjoying it. It's fun.
Oh,
I'm rereading old stuff because I'm a cranky old prick.
Why is my face the only one on the screen?
I'm reading the new Dreadstar because I saw Jim Starlin at a convention and I bought his last 2 books.
There's a new-
The
there's a
Return
new
of
Dreadstar?
Dreadstar.
I'm
Sorry?
reading
The
Batman
new
Family
Dreadstar?
for free online, and I love it.
I love Batman Family. Batman Family is so good.
I've noticed some notes. They do facsimile floppies now. Basically, they'll just reprint a book exactly as it appeared, like in the 60s or 70s.
Uh-huh.
That's in the top 5. It's great. But yeah, as Len said earlier, nostalgia is a powerful.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, we just had Transformers Day, and last week they re-released the Marvel Transformers 1.
Yeah. I'm going to go see Transformers 1 in theaters tomorrow with my
It's
kids.
good.
Yeah.
I really want to hear what you think about it.
I mean, watch it next to a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, so I will get the an unfiltered.
Probably the best way.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Well,
Speaking of which,
So many people have been saying that it's a great, respectful, well-done, character-driven movie, which is not what the trailer told me at all. So I'm really curious for someone I know better to watch it and tell me what they think of it.
I'll let you know what I think. I mean, it's odd that we're not getting good Transformers movies occasionally because there were so many that were so bad for so long. And my wife's a big Michael Bay fan, so I've had to watch all of them. It's married life, and by watch I mean nap through. But so I was there. So, all right, guys, appreciate everyone coming out. Bear, always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
out. Mr. Warren, welcome
Thanks
to
for having
the Brotherhood of people who publish superhero stuff. Good
Thank
to
you,
see
sir.
Looking forward to reading your stuff.
I appreciate it. BlueDragonGames.net. There's a free PDF on there.
Awesome.
Nice.
And Len, always a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. And if I can just really quickly, aside from Blue Dragon Games, if you want to read a neat book, Mr. Warren here is also an author. And this is his first book, which is probably reversed on the screen. It says Talon the Slayer. And it's basically Space Conan. So if you want a nice high-flying sci-fi adventure, check out some of Andrew's writing. You will not be disappointed if you like high-flying sci-fi Conan-esque adventure.
Don't you love it, Mr. Warren, when someone reduces your work to it's basically Space Conan? Doesn't that make you feel really
It
appreciated?
really is basically Space Conan.
Oh, well, then never mind. High praise. High praise.
Pretty accurate, yeah.
For me, that's about as high praise as you can get.
Yes, I know.
I mean, that's like the blurb on the back.
All right, cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the BAMF podcast tonight, and we will see you next time.